And also tonight, 13 Investigators has now learned that towns across our state are about to get a failing grade. The problem is our toxic air. Our senior investigative reporter Bob Siegel tonight is about to show us what's really coming out of those big smokestacks around the state and the impact on Indiana families.
Just look at the sky and you'll see why Indiana has earned a rather dirty reputation. Headline after headline touting Indiana as having some of the worst air in the nation. A lot of our air pollution comes from cars, steel mills, and processing plants. But the worst pollution, it comes from our power plants. Indiana has dozens of them in big cities and small farm towns all across the state. Arsenic, lead, and mercury top a long list of toxic chemicals released from our state's coal-fired power plants. The EPA says they also pump out millions of pounds of dangerous gases that can all impact your breathing and damage your lungs.
Coal-fired power plants are the biggest polluters on the planet.
John Blair is a public health advocate and a Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer. He's been documenting the environmental impact of Indiana power plants. And he says it's not a pretty picture.
The air pollution that comes from these coal-fired power plants causes stroke, it causes cancer, it causes heart attack, it causes asthma, and people are being impacted by it.
People like Leighton Fry. This 3-year-old has terrible asthma. He needs 2 breathing treatments every day and up to 5 other medications just to keep Leighton out of the emergency room.
He'll gasp for air. Sometimes he gets into a coughing fit and it almost sounds like he's not going to catch his breath.
Leighton and his family live in Washington, Indiana, 8 miles directly downwind from Petersburg, home of one of the largest power plants in the state. And there are 3 more massive coal-fired power plants within just a short drive of Leighton's home. Together, they release 54 million tons of toxic chemicals and gases.
You kind of think, well, I wonder if he should go outside today.
There is plenty of evidence that our children are being affected by it.
Norma Kryline is Leighton's pediatrician. She sees hundreds of young patients who suffer from symptoms just like Leighton's. And she thinks pollution from power plants is largely to blame.
They're constantly full of snot and full of infection, and it takes major amounts of medications to get them to where they're healthy.
You see a link between that and air pollution?
Yes, I mean it's a mathematical certainty. Pollutants are inflammatory. It's the same link that we see with cigarette smoke.
The power plants say air quality around their facilities is within legal limits. But 13 Investigates has discovered that is about to change. The EPA is tightening its regulations on sulfur dioxide, considered one of the most harmful gases released by these big power plants. The new rules take effect in a few months. And when they do, 13 Investigates has learned the air quality in several Indiana cities will immediately be deemed unacceptable by the EPA. Cities like Petersburg, Terre Haute, Martinsville, and Indianapolis are all about to fail the nation's newest clean air standard. And it's because of nearby power plants.
We've known some of these areas in Indiana have not met the SO2 standard for a couple of years.
Officials at the Indiana Department of Environmental Management are frustrated and say right now there's nothing they can do. Not until the EPA provides guidelines on how to fix the problem. In the meantime, IDEM continues to monitor air quality round the clock. That monitoring suggests Indiana air has been steadily improving for the past 30 years.
Certainly it's gotten much better over that time period. In fact, it's probably the best it's been during our lifetime.
John Blair agrees. Well, sort of.
It's improving. It's improving significantly. That said, we still live in what I've referred to as a dung hole of pollution.
And he says that pollution is, in many cases, being ignored by the state. Just take a look at IDEM's enforcement track record. The agency used to issue an average of 140 notices of violation each year to companies that break clean air rules. In recent years, that's plummeted to an average of just 56 violation notices. That's a 60% drop.
IDEM is turning their heads. If they find a violation, they aren't really recording it as a violation.
Is IDEM looking the other way?
No, certainly not. It's just that we are doing a good job, I believe, and that the sources are paying attention.
Energy companies say they are paying attention, and they say the amount of pollution they're creating is a lot less than what it used to be. Many power plants have installed scrubbers and other pollution control devices on all of their smokestacks. It's made a big difference. At the Petersburg plant, sulfur dioxide emissions are down 50%. And the decrease is even bigger at the state's largest power plant, according to plant manager John Hayes.
With the scrubbers being put onto the units, it's an 87% decrease in SO2.
In fact, the power companies say for the most part, what's now coming out of these stacks is not pollution at all.
A lot of what you see coming out of that stack is actually water vapor.
Much of it is water vapor, but there's a lot more than that, according to Dr. Krylon.
Steam shouldn't be brown.
She took these pictures on her way to work. They show a dark haze stretching for miles from the Petersburg power plant. The doctor believes it's proof local residents are breathing in a lot more than water vapor.
It's basically a black fog that settles for 10 to 15 miles at a time.
What is that black fog? Well, we showed the pictures to the meteorologist in charge at the National Weather Service. He says the dark haze is indeed pollution from the power plant.
They're just basically particles, real small particles from smoke that are just trapped in this layer here, and they can't go anywhere.
The problem with pollution is it affects everyone.
The photos, the skyline, the medical bills. Health advocates say they all suggest Indiana still has too much air pollution.
With such a high amount of toxic chemicals and dangerous gases released in our state, we want you to be able to see exactly where it's coming from. Take a look at this. We've created an interactive map so you can find the biggest polluters in your community. What chemicals are being released? How much is being released? Neighborhood by neighborhood, it's all just a click away at WTHR.com.